Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Tomorrow we celebrate the Holy Thursday, the day of the Eucharist, the day of priesthood. Let us pray today to prepare this important celebration, and pray for all Christians who are far from practicing their faith, that rediscover Jesus Christ in the Word of God and the Holy Eucharist. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and the hour of our death. Amen. Meditate on wisdom, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So this morning we work on a new chapter, the divine conservation and concurrence. So the meaning first of conservation. So what is first, what is not, and what is it? When we speak about the act of creation, it is not only the beginning. And when I speak about creation in God, it is the act, eternal act, always present in God. But for us, it is in time, and there is a beginning. But creation is not only the beginning; it's also the continuation of existence of the thing. So, what is the act of creation? It is must be thought as the eternal existing act, eternally existing, because the act of creation is identified with the essence of God. So we saw that in God, the subject, the act, and the object are one. We saw that. So that means the act of creation in God is one with His essence. So there is eternal. So the act of creation in God is eternal, and is identified with His own essence. So His own goodness, His own knowledge, His own omnipotence, etc. So the act of creation is not only in the past. Of course, for us it is in the past because we are in time. There is a past, flowing present, because when I say the word present, it's already past. Because it's a nunc fluens, the present is a nunc, a now, a nunc, in Latin we say a nunc fluens. That means flowing now. Flowing now. Nunc is now. And now, when we want to catch it, it already is no more there. It's like water. Try to catch water. So when you try to catch water, water is no more in your hand. It's past. Okay? So the act of creation exists in God from all eternity, identified with His essence. But conservation, no. It is the influence of the creative act on its effects. Not only God produced an effect, creation, the universe, but He continued to exercise His power on that effect. That means the effect cannot continue to exist without the cause. Electricity, for example, you have light. You have light as long as you have the electric power. If electric power stops, no more light. So that is an analogy. Of course, God is not electricity. Electricity is not God. But it's to understand that the action of God is not only at the beginning of the enlightenment of the Lamb, but the continuing of the existence of the being, of creature. Continually being exerted as long as the created thing continue to exist. So the idea of creation is not only linked with the beginning. For the majority of the people, when you speak about creation, it is at the beginning. But for you now, philosopher of God, you know that creation is more than the beginning. It is the continued existence. Because we are abalio, we depend on another, we are contingent. You are always contingent, not only in the beginning, we are contingent in the continuing. Like the lamp depend on the electricity at the beginning, depend also to continue to be enlightened. Huh? So it is not only the beginning of existence, but the continuance of existence. Huh? So in the square, the act of creation is certainly present in God. Conservation is the continuance of creation. Is continued creation. Huh? Continued creation. Well, for us, it is successively, successive. In God, it is one instant. In God, the action of creation, creating, and sustaining are one. Because there is no passage from potency to act. Huh? But for us, we are in time and space, and continually we pass from potency to act. Huh? So we are continually depending on another to pass from potency to act. To move, we saw moving, change, life, all those things require sustaining in existence. Huh? Okay. So, since created things are contingent, they depend on a necessary being, a cause, as it, not only to begin, but to continue. Well, that is the central problem. Therefore, their continuance in existence is necessarily dependent on the necessary cause. So, when God caused the world as an unmoved cause, He caused the world not only at the beginning, He caused the world in His total existence and His total activities. For God is one act of creation, but for us it is a succession of acts. Because we are not in eternal, but now we are in a succession of time. And we move in space.
That is so hard.
Yes. But it's difficult because we are not living in that dimension of God, you know. God is eternal. It is another dimension. It's the reason why we cannot know what will happen after our death. Even if somebody comes here and try to explain to us, we will not understand. A good example of that is St. Paul. You know St. Paul? He said he went to the third heaven. He said, not a single language, we cannot express that. Even if I try to explain that to you, you will not understand. You know, an example of that. You have a teacher, he teaches calculus, he teaches trigonometry, he teaches very high mathematics. And he goes in the second grade in primary school and he begins to explain calculus, you know, to explain trigonometry. Children will not understand. Oh, it's the same. We cannot, even if an elected come to explain what happened, we will not understand. Because we have no references. So what we can say, God is eternal. His dimension is only the present. And we are in succession of instant. So it is what we can say. Yes, brother.
Father, would you say Pascal's wager is the best way to approach this then? Like just...
by the Pascal wager?
Yeah.
Bid or no? No, it's not the best. You know what is the Pascal bid? Wait, we know that, huh?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you go to a lottery, or you play card, or you always bid on the surest side. For example, you go to Kentucky Derby, and you know the horses. So you bid, you put your money on the best you think, you know. So when you think about God, Pascal says, it is better to wage, to bid that God exists, and to put everything on the existence of God. Because if, suppose, God does not exist, then we lose nothing. But if we don't bid, we don't wage on the existence of God, and we die, and God exists, we lose everything. You know, that is the pari. We say that in French, the pari of Pascal, huh? the bid of Pascal, my friend, the pari. It is to wage, to play. Well, that is. Of course, it's not the best. It is a way to try to convince people to be wise and to try to believe instead of not to believe. Okay, now I go to the text here, just under the rectangle. Huh? For us man, creature, there is reason to distinguish between creation as giving an origin to creature, like the making them, and creation as continue to existence. So, what is conservation? It is creation as continuing the existence of the creature that has been originated. Not only they are created, but they continue to be created. What is to be created? To be made from nothing. And to continue to be created, what is that? It is to be continue to exist from nothing. That means continually, God is sustaining us from nothing. He keeping us into existence. And to keep creation into existence is to continue creation. And creation, it is to do something from nothing. That means the whole universe we contemplate is continually sustained by God from annihilation. Because the whole universe by itself cannot exist by itself. So continually God created that world, that universe, and continue to sustain it from annihilation. Because if God stop one instant to sustain the world will disappear. Like electricity. If I cut off the current, no more electricity, you know. No, that is a pure, simple analogy. Now I continue. For God's action, conservation means the creative act preserving in existence the creature it had produced from nothing. So preserving in existence. That means impeding them from being annihilated. You know? Continually, why we are menaced by annihilation? Continually, because we don't exist by ourselves. We are totally dependent on God, on the Creator. It is what the modern man does not like. He wants to be independent. And when you study the deist, you remember the deist and the theist. The theist, God continued to intervene. The deist, God make the world, after that, it is my business. So conservation is not the problem of God, it's my responsibility, you know. Okay? I am the boss. But if I depend continually on God, He is the boss. He is the source of life. I'm not the source of right, the source of justice, the source of life, etc. So, two ways now of thinking of conservation in man. For example, your mother. How your mother can protect your conservation. A first way is to remove, to take off all the obstacles menacing your life. For example, you remember when you were young, many children are attracted by what is bright. For example, a knife, a scissor. They saw their mother and they want to do the same thing as their mother. They are 3 years old, 2 years old, and they want to use the scissor. But your mother said, no, don't use that, it's dangerous for your eyes. You know, because if you put that in your eye, you lose your eye. So your mother protect your continuing in life, taking off what is the obstacle, menacing your life. And the second way, it is by preventing the action of causes which will have the effect of ending the existence of a being. For example, your mother knows that measles is dangerous, can be mortal for you. So your mother, under the suggestion of the doctors and scientists, what she did probably, she took you to the doctor and they gave you a vaccine. They vaccinated you to prevent measles to kill you. You know, measles is in Africa, when a child, the measles, up to the age of 3 is mortal. mortal. After 3, they can resist, but before 3, the child organism is mortal. So it is important to be vaccinated. You know, that is to prevent. I prevent in such a way that you. But your mother, does your mother continue to sustain you in your existence, even when your mother gave you food, you milk and potatoes and etc. to live? She feeds you. In fact, does she sustain you in existence? Directly? No, indirectly. Why? Because when she gives you food, she prevents you from dying. So the action in man is to take the obstacle against existence, to prevent what can suppress your life. But we cannot give life. Or your parents transmit life, but they are not the cause of your life itself. They are the cause of the becoming, not the cause of the being. Your being depends not on your parent, depends on the one who exists by himself. And your parents were not able to give what they did not have, because my father, my mother existed by another, by God. So they cannot give me something. No, I am not independent from God. No, I continue to have the same dependence. But my father and my mother as the cause of my becoming, but not of my being. And they can be the cause also, indirect cause of my conservation by putting aside obstacle and preventing what can hurt me. For example, your parents know that, for example, that plant is poison. So you say, be careful, don't use that, you know. Apparently that seems very good, but you will know, you will be sick, you will be sick. Little cherry, sometimes you see little cherry, you say, it should be good. Yes, take that and you will be very sick. Now, direct conservation. So here consists in the continuance of the action of the originally, which originally give existence. That means the continuation of the action, the cause who give you existence, and that existence were before you have that. In fact, that being, that direct action of God is not only to exist, it is to allow you to continue to exist. So when God created man, He does create not only to become man, like your father, your mother, but He wants to continue you be a man. Of course, you will say, my father, my mother wanted I continue to be a man. They fed me, they took care of me, yes, but they were not the cause of your continuance in life. They were indirect cause, not the direct cause. Direct cause, okay? I continue. In the case of man, most beings that are produced by our activities had some existence before we acted upon. In fact, when we do something, we transform something. What is the producing for man? For example, the carpenter who did this desk, he took planks of wood and he put a new form. The form of a desk, or the form of a piano, the form of a bed, the form of a chair. So producing for man is transformation. Transform. What is transform? Is to change the form. Interesting. In fact, here you have a good example to see that our language is soaked with Greek philosophy. A lot of words we use, they are philosophical. Actual, for example, the word actual, actuality. Actual is act and potency. So we have a lot of work. We don't realize that. But now, you will realize maybe more and more than when you thought you use philosophical concepts without knowing they are philosophical concepts. So for us, production is transformation. It's not creation. We transform from something into a new thing. But if we are not starting from nothing. we start from something. Huh? Okay? The sculptor starts from marble, the carpenter starts from wood, etc. Okay? And when you create a pie, you start from dough, you start from sugar, etc. Okay? So man's activity on things is transformation. Okay? Now human activities have merely changed things already in existence. And when our activity stops, changed things will simply remain in the condition in which they left them, until the action of some other cause changed them anew. That means the change you did stay independently of you. For example, Michelangelo, he sculpted David. That David is still in Florence. If you go to Florence, you will see the statue. And that's it. Nobody. The statue does not change, except if somebody arrives and changes the statue. Must make something. But the effect continues to stay without the cause, who is the transformer, the cause of the transformation. For example, the carpenter who did this desk, maybe he is still living, maybe he is dead, but the desk continues to exist, independently of the carpenter. So the carpenter is the cause of the beginning. The carpenter is the cause of the transformation. It's not the cause of the continuation in existence. Okay? It is the same for my father and mother. They are dead. I continue to exist. But they were the cause of my becoming. Without them, I will not become. Okay. I continue. Human activity did not give thing existence originally. Of course, in language, we say that carpenter created a beautiful desk. Strictly speaking, he transformed wood into a desk. He did not create a desk. Okay? And they don't need the influence of man's action to keep the existence already at. That means what we do continue to exist. It's the same for teaching. You know, St. Thomas lived in the 13th century, and we continue to use his knowledge. St. Thomas is no more here. No? It's the same. Maybe in a few years you will teach philosophy, and you will think, Father Michel said that, but I will not be there. I am only the cause of the becoming of your learning. In fact, a student, the teacher is not the cause. Is not the cause of the learning, the direct cause of the learning, no. The direct cause of the learning is the student. But is one of the instruments, co-activity, co-action, that help the student to understand, of course. No? In fact, learning is a co-activity. It's a co-production. It's the work of the teacher and the work of the student. It's the same it's a good analogy to understand God. God is giving, is teaching, is grace, and you cooperate. You accept or you reject. It's a good analogy. It's not perfect, but it's a good analogy. Okay, I cannot say I am a God, no. But I share in the power of God. When I teach, and when you teach in the future, when you heal a person, if you become a nurse, that you share in the power of God to teach, in the power of God to heal. And that is cooperation. It's exactly what we are studying this morning in next class. How God can work with us, and we can work with Him. Concurrence. Concurrence.
But it's not necessary for Him, right?
No, God is not necessarily depending on you.
Yeah.
But He wills to depend on you. And that willing is eternal. That means He gave you freedom. He will not come back. Because if He comes back, suspending your freedom, He is contradicting His wisdom. That, of course, it does not depend directly on but He wills that man cooperate with it. Now, if you want to be patient, we see that soon.
Yeah, my bad.
It is central. Yes, brother.
I know this is probably theology, but when he gives men dominion over the earth.
Yes.
What's the difference between having dominion and then like the deists thought like
Okay.
he created
Yes.
it and then they
Yeah. The difference is, so for the deists, God gave dominion also. Like it. After that, he does not continue to take care of that. He say, okay, go alone. But for the theists, God continually. That's the difference.
Oh,
You know,
wait.
for a theist, God not only give you dominion, create the world, give you dominion on the world. You see, yeah, now you're the master of the world. You have to transform the world. But He continue to sustain us in our action of transforming the world. And that is not accepted by the deists. Because if God is constantly working with us, we continue to depend on Him. Therefore, we must obey Him. We are not the boss. We are not the master of nature. And they want to be the master of nature through their reason, human reason, rationalism. Yes, brother.
So is that a good word to use, dominion over, or is that a bad translation?
No, it's like when God gave man the dominion, that means you are now responsible to take care of nature, to transform nature for your good, the good of your children. That is, today we call that ecology, for example, the relation of man toward nature. It is a part of justice. Ecology is a virtue attached to the virtue of justice. Because I have to respect everyone in his due, in his right. And in fact, why we have to respect nature? Because nature is not your property. It's the property of the whole world, all humanity. I give you an example. For now in Brazil, they are destroying the most beautiful forest in the world. They are destroying the lung of the world because the trees are the lungs. The trees on the earth are very excessively important. They have the lungs. They absorb CO2, etc. So they are destroying that. Why? To produce corn. Why to produce corn? To produce fuel. To put in your gas. To make you run. But the consequence, the poor farmer who have cows, he has not to pay a lot higher. And finally, because the farmer must to pay higher, finally it is you who pay higher. To please only the gas company to make more money. You know, that is ethics of socialism. I go back to my text here. Remark. An apparent exception. Our thoughts depend on our act of thinking to exist. That means my thought exists only the time I think. You remember when we studied philosophy of man, we saw that there are two formal signs. In logic we saw that also. Two formal signs. That means those signs exist only to indicate something else. And those formal signs are the phantasm and the concept. The phantasm and the concept. Sensible, intelligible, sensible express species, intelligible express species. Their existence is not real, it is only virtual. That means a concept, a phantasm indicates another thing. You cannot seize the concept. You cannot seize. It is indicated, their nature. So here, that concept and the phantasm, if you want, exist only in the measure I think. When you cease to think, when you cease to dream, your imagination, image stop, and your concept stop. No?
It exists only in the measure?
In the measure you are thinking.
Oh.
See what you see here. So in our thought, we have example of things that require direct conservation from us. That means the concept and phantasm depend directly on our conservation. As long as I keep them in mind, they exist. When I forget them, I sleep, or I do another thing, they disappear. Okay? They don't have a real existence. They have only a virtual existence. Okay? And they continue to exist as long as we are thinking about them, the existence of that. Well, that is what we studied that in philosophy of man. It is interesting to see, it's an analogy, and it is an analogy. That means we exist as long as God thinks about us. But there is no danger because God is eternal and He thinks about us for all eternity. So He continues to keep us. He does not sleep. He is always active, eternally active. So eternally He is sustaining us in our existence. But in fact we exist as long as He thinks about us. If God stopped one instant to think about us, we will disappear. As my concept, my imagination. For example, think about the house of your father in Vietnam, or the house of your grandfather. Think about that now. You represent that. It was not in your mind 2 minutes ago. It is in your mind now. If you think about other things, that disappear. So that image depends on the time you think about that. But the thought of God, the omniscience of God, omnipotence of God is eternal. So we continue to exist. We cannot exist without God think, without being taught by God, and willed by God, and loved by God, etc. Okay? So that is the, now I go to page 3. Indirect conservation. God, like my mother, can prevent me from obstacles, then cause my death, for example. But the direct conservation, always God sustains me. In my essence, I am essentially dependent on Him. Why? Because in my essence, there is no existence. You remember that essence and existence? In the essence of man, rational animal, is not include the existence. The existence does not a part of the definition of finite being. Not a single finite being can be defined by existence. He is defined by, we know his nature, what it is, what are its activities, but we cannot know it exists by himself. Existence is not a part of my nature. I cannot define man, rational, animal, existing. Because we know historically, 3 billion years ago, man did not exist. So therefore, man is contingent. Because he is contingent, existence does not belong to his essence. Therefore, if your cat exists, it is because someone, some power, sustain it, who sustain you in existence. That means it is the power of God, omnipotence of God, sustaining you in your essence, what you are, rational animal. Okay? In fact, continually, God save us, if you want, sustain us against annihilation, against nothingness. Because by ourselves, we are nothing. You know, one day we say, some scientists say, Lord, I am nothing. It is true. Understood, I am nothing by myself. But I am something by you. That means I exist not by myself. By myself, I am nothing. But by you, I am something. So it is you, your love, makes me something, existing. So my existence does not depend on mine. So corollaries in the middle of the page. God's continued presence in the universe as the upholder, sustainer of the thing He has made is essential to continuance of that universe. So omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience. God is continually present in everything. Is the reason why we can adore God in everything. Be careful. We don't adore the thing. We adore God as sustaining the thing in His existence. So if you like your dog, you can say, my dog does not exist by himself, but because God loved my dog, He loved me, He sustained my dog in existence. We can say the universe is the manifestation of the presence of God. And what is the most beautiful being in the universe? The human person. And that is very, well, it is in the Bible, Genesis. God made God to his image and resemblance. Likewise. We are like God because we are intelligent. That is interesting. What is the difference between to say that, to affirm that God is everywhere, sustaining everything, and pantheism? What is the difference? Pantheism, God is everything. You know, but God is in everything as creator and sustainer in the existence, and not only in the existence, also in his activities, his mode of being, activities. What is nature? Nature is the essence, you remember that? As principle of activities. No? For example, what is my essence? Is to be a rational animal. As an animal, I have activities. As a rational, I have activities. So not only God sustained me in existence, He sustained my essence as principle of activities. That means not only He sustained my existence, He sustained also my activities. And that leads us to the word concurrences. And God is working with us. So when your dog barks, he cannot bark without being sustained by God. No? And when he looked at you with intelligent eye, he said, oh, you mistress, oh, master, you are so kind. Huh? When it is sustained by God, and you are sustained to think that. That is, when you think about that, it's overwhelming, you know. God knows everything. He sustains us in everything. Every operation. For example, you think, you imagine, you dream. God knows that. God knows each of your beat of heart. He knows you better than your doctor. He knows you better than the surgeon. Not only He knows you, He sustains you in your existence, He sustains you in your activity. Your heart cannot beat without being sustained by God. You cannot think now without sustaining. I cannot teach you without being sustained by God. Universal concurrence. Not only God conserves things in existence, He sustains things in their activities. You cannot hear, you cannot smell, you cannot hear without being sustained by God. That means we are totally depending on us. We are essentially contingent. I told you many times, for me the most powerful proof is the contingency. I can do nothing by myself. And now you can understand St. Paul when he says, everything is grace. It's a gift. Because we have no right to receive anything. So if I smell, if I see, if I understand, if I pray, if I play, etc., all those are not because from me, because I am sustained by God. Imagine, when you think about that, what is the consequence of that? I can live without having a relation with God. Can I be totally independent? Okay, it's your business. Continue to give me, continue to sustain me. I don't need you. I want to do my own business. Now, if we want to be logical, and our ancestors, since 3 million years, they were logical, when they realized that they were dependent on God the Son, on the godless water, and what they have a cult. They create a link that is religion. But this religion is to be aware of my total dependence on God. I depend totally on Him, but He depends nothing on me. Yes?
So, and this is probably theology again, but so He's in everything as far as sustaining us. What about when we sin?
Okay, sin is not a philosophical word. Offended God. You say offend God, and when you offend God. But you know, that, we are going next chapter, it is about freedom and God, and evil, okay? Be patient. But that is a sign we are not indifferent about what you study. In fact, those classes we have now are probably the most important in the whole philosophy. Because when you will be in ministry, you will find the problem, two problems. The problem of evil, suffering, and the problem of freedom. The two big questions. Well, so now we are studying the element, and next week we will try to give an answer. But I am greatly humble. I have the golden medal of humility. I say to you, I will not satisfy your inquiry for truth. Even St. Thomas was not able, even St. Augustine, even St. Robert Bellarmine, even Molina. You must recognize, especially on that there is a limit. Because if you can pass over that limit, you are God. Okay, page 4. The need for conservation. All finite, by their nature, we are finite, therefore we depend on another. That is obvious. I go to the square, the rectangle. Even if the universe was eternal, it would be eternally contingent. We saw that. I continue, the way a thing continues to exist corresponds to the mode of beginning of existence. A being created as a cat will continue to act as a cat. So, in fact, our activities are in the same line as our essence, our nature. See, if my nature is depending on God, my activities will depend on God. You know? So I continue to depend on God because I am created by God. Here you can link that with ethics. When we speak about obey my nature, I have to obey my nature. Why? Because do I make my own nature? I receive my nature from the Creator. So when I obey my nature, natural law, I obey eternal law. I obey God. You know? So when a man obeys his conscience, his nature, even if he does not know that he is obeying God. You know? He is doing the will of God. Okay. Page 4, in the square, I continue. It is an application of the principle. Here there may be a correction to this. Agere, not agitur. Agere sequitur esse. Agere sequitur follows esse existence. Being. So that means the way we act, agere, to act, agere, action, the way we act depends on the way we are. If I am a cat, I will meow. If I am a dog, I will bark. If I am a man, I will talk. No?
Sometimes.
I will control. And the proof of intelligence sometimes is to keep silence. Okay, I continue. Just on the. It is true that when it is created, it is giving a being of its own. So then when I am created, I have my being. Your being and my being are not the same. No? We are different. And I continue. And that being is subsisting. What is subsistence? It is the substance having existence. Subsistence is the subsistence. It is substance. My my substance, but is under permanent, under change, having existence. That is subsisting. And when you say something subsists, what is the meaning of that? Continue to exist. Continue to exist. Okay. So but this So we have my own being. I continue to subsist because I am a substance with existence. But that existence, I receive that. It's not in my essence, in my substance to exist. So if I continue to exist because I receive, I am dependent, I am contingent. Okay? So, but this being of its own, my own existence, being of its own, or if you want, right, my own existence, abalio, which is received, is always derived and dependent reality, and can never be anything else. That means in every action I will do, I will be always dependent on another, on God. That means I have to reflect on that here. How? The problem is I can do nothing without God. In my existence, I receive it. In my nature, I receive it. So in my action are also depending on the way. That means every action I do, I depend on the source of life. I depend on God. Okay? So this being of its own, that means my own existence, okay, can never become a thing with its own reason for existence. The fact I have my own being, I receive my own being, is not to justify that I exist by myself. I have my own being by another. I am I, not because of I, because of he.
So it's not really ours.
Because I depend on, you know. That means even in my own existence as individual, as a person, I depend in every aspect of my life. In my substance, in my accident. We have 9 accidents, you remember? And those 9 accidents, we call that also mode of being. Mode of being. For example, action is a mode of being. A relation is a mode of being. Quality is a mode of being, etc. That means I am totally dependent. So what I have to do, I have to kneel down and to say, you are the boss. Thank you for giving me existence. But when you do that, who is the beneficiary of that?
Not God. No, you are.
That's interesting, huh? When God asks you to pray, He knows that it is not He who will receive some benefit, it is you. You know, look at the teacher, for example. When the teacher teaches mathematics, he knows mathematics. But when he explains to you, and he asks you to explain to him, you had nothing to the teacher. You know, when I was a kid, my teacher with popsicle, you remember that? The stick, popsicle stick, unfortunately without popsicle. She have a lot, and say 10 plus 7 plus 5. But when I said, the teacher asked me, what is the 7 plus 5 equal what? I said 12. Did I add something to the knowledge of my teacher? No. Nothing. But I add something to my knowledge. Who was the one who took benefit of that? The teacher? No, the student. It's a good image. I think it's a good image to understand that. We can add nothing to God. But when we learn 7 plus 5, and when you thank God, we pray to God, it is for our benefit. When the student studies, his multiplication is for his own benefit, not for the teacher at all. Teacher knows that for 50 years. But you are learning that. You are taking knowledge, etc. Okay? I go to... so all finite being depend on that. Just after that, God cannot create a being of such a kind that when it is created, it will be independent. God cannot create an independent being. It would be contradictory for God to create something independent from Him. What is the word independent? Without any relation, without dependency. Is it possible? No. So God cannot create, everything He creates is depending. He cannot create another God. If He creates another God, the other God will not be a God, because He will depend on the first. Okay? That's important to prove the unicity of God. God can be only one. Can be only one. We cannot create other God. That is not a limit to the power of God. It is on the contrary to affirm who God is. Okay. So we spoke about that. God, when He created man not only with His nature, but with His powers. So my intellect, my will, my senses, all that are created by God. Not only my senses, but the activities of my senses. Page 5. So here St. Thomas will say, will repeat what I told you. So I go to the rectangle just after. Creation is a relation between the agent and the effect, between the cause and the effect. The effect exists as long as the relation subsists. What is that relation from creature to God? Is a relation of total dependency. So we remember when we study a relation in logic, maybe, you have God and you have a creature, finite being, creature, finite being. So when I say, what is the relation of creature toward God? It is a relation, a real relation. Real relation of dependency. Real relation of dependency. We depend necessarily, essentially on God. But what is the relation between God and His creature? It's a relation of reason. Reason. That means God does not depend on us. It does not depend on us. When He make us, He make us totally without any necessity, without any dependency. God does not depend on us at all. Because if He depends on only once, He will not be God. Because it's infinitely complete, infinitely perfect. So the relation between creature to God is a real relation. The relation between God and creature is a relation of reason. But reason why? Because I know that relation using my mind. It's not only a word. It's something. It's not stupid to think about that. Okay. I go to 122. So different from being, cause of being, and becoming. So I go. In the first act, in the act of creation, when God creates, it is the cause of the being. God. We pass from nothing to something. But in the case of creatures, think about a carpenter, think about your parent, for example. They are the cause of the becoming. The carpenter is the cause of the becoming of the desk. It's not the cause of creation. He did not create the desk from nothing. He used planks. Okay? I go to... Oh, here I give you the example of a building, etc. Next page, page 6. Now the second paragraph we have to cover is the divine concurrence, or cooperation. Cooperation. Operate in Latin, opera, means to work. To work. So co-worker. Man is the co-worker. Interesting, no? You know, and John Paul II uses that passage of the Bible when he has his encyclical about work. He wrote one marvelous encyclical about human work. And in fact, work is to operate, and man is the co-operator. If one in simple word is the co-worker. He works with God. In English, work, opus, it is what we accomplish, the work. Okay? Jesus said, I came on earth to make the work of my Father. What my Father wants, I do, I accomplish. So meaning of and kind of cooperation. So first necessity of creative act for the activity of creative causes. That means the influence of creative act must be constantly exhausted, not only to conserve the existence of things in the universe, but also for their activity. Well, that is a summary of what I explained since the beginning of the class. Not only causes things to exist, give them their nature, is the cause of the nature, is the cause also of their activity. That means we cannot act, not only exist, but act without being sustained. So I continue. God is the first cause, both. First, in the sense to give origin to all other things, he does everything from nothing. And in the future sense, secondly, that is the source of all causality in the universe. Not only he gives to the planet, to the flower, to the trees, to the animals their existence, but he is the source of all their causality. That means one being in the universe can be the cause of, for example, the sun. The sun is one of the most important causes of life on earth, no? Imagine if the sun disappeared, the universe will die, almost instantly. Is the reason why in the country where, like Sweden, North Canada, Russia, in winter, we have only 1 hour, 2 hours of sun some places. People, no sun, they are sick. So we are sick, so you have to eat fish, oil, you have to take vitamin to replace what? The absence of sun. That means sun is a cause. So that the sun, God is the source of all causality. So if the sun is the cause of light, is the cause of warmth, is the cause of good health, it is because it is sustained by God in His activity. If now, as a teacher, I am the cause that you understand better, I hope, I am sustained in that by activity. Not a single finite cause can act without being sustained by God in His causality. In the fact, not only that exists, in the fact that it is causing something. Your cat, not only your cat exists, but your cat is able to run after a mouse. And God is sustaining your cat when it runs after a mouse. Of course, we don't think about that, but we are, as a philosopher, we have to think about that. If you deny that, you deny the omnipotence of God. You deny the omniscience of God. God knows everything. He wills every activity. No a single activity of a flower cannot grow without being sustained in his activity by God. Of course, I will not teach that in the class of botanic of science. But as a philosopher, I can affirm that. Not as a scientist, of course, because we are in metaphysics. Okay? And finally, he is active in our causation. Not only he is active as the source of causality, but in the act itself of causing now. For example, I am talking, teaching. In the act of my teaching, God is sustaining me. And you act of listening, you are sustained by God. You are very dependent, no? Very dependent. But what is my responsibility? Do I have something to do in that? Are you totally passive when you listen to the teacher? No. So there is a part of cooperation. God does not do everything. God teach me philosophy. Marvelous teaching. No, you have to open the book, you have to make an effort. And when you open the book, when you make an effort, you shut off your television, you are sustained by God in doing that. St. Paul is very, very clear. He says, Deus, in the Philippians, Deus aesque operatur in vobis et velle et perficere. Velle in Latin means the will, the willing, velle, the willing, and perficere, the achievement, to accomplish good. God is only the one who makes you to will, and intention is making you to act. So that is very strong. In one simple say, everything is grace. So the big question of each of you, I'm sure, where is my responsibility? Where is my part? Okay. So, I continue here. The divine cooperation is the activity of God in the operation of all finite and second causes. But its effect is not the origin of the creature, but the activity of the creator God. Not only God create your cat, but He sustains your cat when your cat is running after a mouse. So a first division, we have what kind of cooperation? We have moral or cooperation. Moral efficiency. For example, you give an order, you command, you persuade, you give a good advice. When I say, for example, you should study more because, or you have to do that. That is moral cooperation. The teacher cooperates with you. When your mother said to you, you have to put order in your home, she was a moral cooperation. Moral cooperation. Okay? That is not difficult to understand. Physical cooperation means in the nature producing this effect. Is the cooperation in the nature producing the effect. For example, when two causes are working together, for example, two horses. Two horses are hauling a wagon here. A wagon. So that two horses, horses number one, horses number two, they add their strength to make a result. So they are working. You studied that in physics. Physics. So that is cooperation. Physical efficiency. Physical efficiency. Well, next page. Now we have a second division of cooperation. Well, first we have moral and physics. Moral and physical cooperation. Second division, mediate cooperation or immediate cooperation. Mediate, that means indirect, or immediate, direct. Okay, immediate cooperation is to give to a cause the power to produce some effect. It is what happened, for example, for a priest. Well, as a Canadian here, I cannot preside marriage in Connecticut. If somebody asks me, Father, you are a priest, do you want to bless our marriage? I cannot do that. I can, but I may not. I have no power. I must receive a delegate power from the priest, from the diocese. I must receive a delegate power from the state. Well, in Quebec, I have a license. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4. Not my license. But here, I have no power. So that we call that immediate cooperation. If you give the power to someone, that person, in your name, or in the name of the church, or in the name of Jesus Christ, will accomplish something. Not only from her or his physical power, but from the power the one you represent gives you. That is not difficult to understand. Immediately. The cooperation in this case it can be moral. For example, when you give that your attorney, your lawyer, you give the power to make to sell something, to sue a company, etc. That is immediate cooperation. I continue. It is not possible for men to give physical power to other people. I can give moral power, but I cannot give physical power. I cannot say, okay, transfusion of energy. So I take a string, a syringe, and go that to your blood, and my energy, no. I plug you. No, we cannot plug. There is a transmission of energy. We can transport microbes or germs, but not energy. Okay, so immediate cooperation now. As man can do, it is to use and direct the power or direct the power which other thing possess. Well, in the case of man, man can have immediate power on a thing, using it and directing it. So if I use something and I direct something, for example, you have a direct power on your car. No? You use your car and you control, you direct your car. I can say you have a direct power on your car. It is not a car, a remote car. It is direct contact. Okay? But of God, the Creator gives the power. In the case of God, not only God used the power, but God gives the power. The man and God. So God gives the power and directs also the power. So what is the difference between man and God? Man uses and directs. He does not create the power. God gives the power and directs the power. I give you an example. Your will, for example, your imagination. Huh? So it is a power. The will is a power. Imagination is a power. We don't create that, but we use your power and you can control your power. No? Freedom. Huh? You have imagination. You can use your imagination and you can control your imagination. But God does not use, He gives the power. When you use your will, God gives you the will, and also God control your will. That means you can do nothing, you cannot will nothing without being sustained by God. He gives you imagination, and He directs your imagination. That means you cannot imagine the house of your grandfather without being sustained in your activity of imagining by God. You see the difference, huh? Man uses what he receives. God gives and directs. He does not use, He gives and directs. So here it is a case of cooperation. In cooperation, God gives the power, man uses the power. For example, I am teaching you. God gives me the power of understanding and explaining and teaching. But I use it. I don't give it. I receive it. And God sustains me. At the same time, I direct my thought. You know, when I think, it is Michel Legault thing. No, it is not God. But I cannot think without being sustaining in my thinking by God. Like the lamp. You know, the lamp is illuminating you. Huh? The lamp is illuminating you, but is not receiving the electricity. So, by analogy, we can say God is giving our understanding, giving my way of teaching, and at the same time, He directs me, He sustains me in my action. But I have to use it, and on my side, I have to direct. For example, my two horses. One horse is asked to go in the same line as the other. Suppose this horse is attracted by other things, he is going like that, or going like that. The problem, huh? Concurrence. And of course, God is not a horse, but He is cooperating with you. That means He is sustaining you in your action, but He is not taking your place. He is not taking your place. Remember when you were a kid, when the first time you wrote, and the teacher hold your hand and help you to make a P, to make a S, etc. Huh? You were writing. He was writing, or she was writing with you. But finally, you were writing. It was you who hold the pen. He hold your hand. Or she hold your hand, you know. That analogy, of course, every analogy is imperfect. Huh? I continue. So, notion of immediate cooperation. When the several causes act together, the effect is immediate result of the action of each, huh? You and God. Huh? Remarks. Cause of finite causes of the same order. So the result of the combination effort of the action of each of the causes, and consequently, the causes acting are each only a partial cause of the effect. The horse number 1 and the horse number 2, each one is a partial part of the effect. Cause of different order, God and man, for example, or man and your dog, or your horse. When causes are different order, they are exerting a causality in different order, and each, very important, each is complete in its own order. Is a complete cause in its own order. For example, suppose you are, you know, in the past, our ancestors, they worked with oxen. They worked with oxen. So the ox was giving his strength, and the man was giving his mind. And together, they were able to do a good job. You understand that? And they were different order. So man is working, and God is with him, sustaining him, and everyone is responsible of the whole, but each one on his different aspect. That means, you know, the good action of the saint is the glory of God, and the good action of the saint is the glory of the saint. That is very, very important. No? Each is complete cause in its own order. No? In its own order. You write, you are the principal cause of your writing, but your pencil is also a cause of your writing. And your pencil is a complete cause as instrumental cause, and you are principal cause as thinking, but you write. No? So necessity. Why divine cooperation is necessary? First, primary, because the supreme of God as first cause. And supremacy of God. God is first cause. Okay, first mover, etc. We saw that. Huh? I go to second. Secondarily, because the dependence of God, second causes. Huh? Here, contingency, second proof. Interesting. The first proof. Second proof. Huh? Contingency. Very second. A second cause as a created thing is essentially dependent. Apart from the divine powers, there is second causes, neither a reason to exist or efficiency to act. I cannot exist by myself. I cannot completely alone by myself. I need to be sustained. Then, if the second cause can act at all, it must be with the cooperation of divine power. And finally, the last page, page 9. Nature of divine cooperation. So the divine moral cooperation is not satisfying, of course. But God also gave me the commandment, for example, the 10 commandments. That is a moral participation. What is important is that is next paragraph. Divine cooperation must be physical. God must act with and in the activity of the second cause. Divine cooperation must be immediate. Not only He gives to the cause the power to act, but the act along with the cause. He acts with me. And the action of the second cause is possible only because God is acting with me. That means I am really depending on God, but I keep my part. In doing my part, I am sustained by God. When you help your mother to make a pie when you were 7 years old, now you have your real part. But you were sustained in the cooking of the pie by your mother. When you wrote at the first grade, you wrote yourself, but you were sustained in writing. So then, conclusion, then, the cooperation of God with the second cause must be physical, immediate. God cannot be partial cause of the effect. It cannot be divided. God cannot be partial cause. God is complete cause of the effect as first causality, why the second cause, man, creature, is the total cause of a second causality. Each one, God and creature, exists in complete causality in its order. God as first cause, and you as second cause. Your teacher helping you to write, and you are holding the, or your pencil is working with you, but in his own domain, and you in your own domain. Both you are responsible for writing. You cannot write alone. Here the causality, efficient cause and instrumental cause. But here, in the case of man, don't forget the instrumental cause is intelligent and free. Your pencil is not intelligent and free. So the question continues to exist. Continue to exist. You know, that pencil is not intelligent free. But you, when you are working with God, you continue to be free. Next time, next program, you will be at the same station. We will speak about that. Okay.